Right, hello, good morning, and welcome to another one of my PS3 videos. So today I'm going to be doing a full refurbishment of this console. As you can see here, just turn it around slightly, you can see that we have a warranty seal intact, and this doesn't slide off. So this doesn't appear to be open before, but we'll know for sure once we get inside of it. So basically what I like to do before I continue to open and do a refurbishment is I do look at Webman and I do a syscon dump. Now I'll show you the syscon dump a bit later. The syscon dump consists of 1001, 1004 errors, which is basically power supply and switching off at the back errors, so improper shutdowns. Sometimes an improper shutdown will register as a power supply error as well, which is why we have 1004, which is power supply, 1001. We do have 12023 error. I believe that's the error code off the top of my head, which is Southbridge. This is common as well because the heat pad that's on top of the Southbridge chip is redundant after 3 to 4 years, and these are 15-year-old consoles, so sometimes they just get a bit too hot, and when you do an improper shutdown it will register as a Southbridge error as well. So this is what I've discovered from my experience. These are non-fatal errors, and because we have no fatal errors on here, I am then happy to open this up and do a refurbishment. If I find a fatal error on here, what I will then do is revert this back to original firmware and send it back to the seller saying I don't want it, thank you very much. So when you buy a console from me, you're getting a console that has no fatal errors, and we put all the preventative measures in place to make sure that we don't obtain any fatal errors in the near future. So a common thing with these is the CPU temp. You can see we're at 40% fan speed, CPU temps at 71 degrees, and that's just sitting in the XMB menu. We're actually in the webman menu. This is not resourceful. So as you can imagine, if we start putting a game in there like The Last of Us or God of War 3, this is going to be well into the late 70s, early 80s, and that's dangerously hot. It's not dangerously hot in the respect that the chips could burn out. It's more about board warping, and board warping causes BGA issues on the CPU and GPU. So keeping this as cool as possible is really, really important. It's never here on the RSX because on the heat spreader it protrudes out. So where the die hits the heat spreader, there's a slight protruding out on the RSX, and that always makes good contact. Where the issue is on the CPU, it doesn't protrude out. It has to make absolute good contact. There's a slight bow in the heat spreader design on these early models, and it always loses contact. So we do need to fix that with a small amount of pressure on the other side of the board. We'll be going through that in the refurbishment a little bit later. So I'm just going to pause this while I set this up so you get an overhead view of what I'm doing, and then we'll start on the refurbishment thing. Here's a tip: if you're going to open your PS3 down to the motherboard, do warm up your console first. So basically switch it on for 10 minutes on syscon. Make sure that your temperatures are in the 70s, mid 70s ideally. We just had this kick up to 40% fan speed, which took it from 75 degrees down to 71 degrees, but that's fine. We can then wait for it to go up again, which I will do, and then we'll start to dismantle this. So I'll do the overhead view and I'll see you in a moment. So we're just going to preserve this warranty seal. The way we do that is we loosen the glue behind it. This then means that when you take it off, you don't expose the invalid. It actually comes through. So as you can see, that's come off clean. We don't want to break this. These sometimes break, so I do put some tweezers down the back of it. So a small hole will be there, but you won't see it once you pop it back in. Do have a little pot which you're going to put all your bits and bobs into. We take this Torx screw out. I replace this with a Phillips screw. I think that's a real pain that Sony have done that, so we'll be replacing that a little bit later. So I'll just take these screws out and I'll see you in a moment. Right, so I've taken those screws out, and this is pretty typical of what you're going to find. The dust here and the dust here. It is pretty good news because I can see that the tab down here hasn't been broken, and this hasn't been broken, but the adhesion has gone away with a bit of time because so much dust has got in here basically. So it's got underneath this little sticky thing here, but it's good to see that that's still in place and hasn't been ripped away. It's just added confirmation that the console hasn't been opened before. So all I'm going to do now is just dust it away with a little paintbrush like this. So I'll do that and then I'll see you again in a minute. Okay, so I've took the blue driver out and dusted it with a paintbrush, as you can see, and now I've dusted this area as much as we can until we take this and this off. So we're going to do that next, and then we'll see you in a second. Okay, so now we're down to this stage. We've dusted off the power supply, the Wi-Fi board, and this little piece that was here as well, the bit that comes off the Wi-Fi. So now what I do is I clean this as is. Actually, some of the packing paper's actually got inside as well. Probably a reason why you shouldn't use shredded paper to pack your console, because it's certainly found a way of getting in here. You've got a piece of paper here, a piece of paper here. Right, okay, so I'm going to clean this up and then we'll see you in a moment. Right, so as you can see, we've given that a bit of a clean. So the theme here is clean as you go. Take the Blu-ray drive out, clean it. Take as much dust out as you can out of that stage. Take the power supply, the Wi-Fi board out, clean that, then clean the area underneath. So basically we're down to all the screws and the power board that we need to undo now. If you've bought one of these and you want to make sure that it's never been opened before, obviously the tabs are important, which I showed you earlier. They need to be in place. There's one across here which connects this part to the card reader, so that tab needs to be intact. Also there's a tab on the side of the power supply. You want to see that intact as well. And then you want to see these, they put heat tape basically on the top side of the NEC tokens, so you want to see those there. There is some models I believe they didn't put them on, but if you don't see these here, I would be suspicious. Take a note of the revision of the motherboard, look it up, see if the tape is supposed to be on here. Okay, if it's not there, that means somebody has opened your console before and been down to the motherboard. If you look up the revision of the motherboard and they say the tape wasn't included, then you know it's still okay. So you want to be checking these things every step of the way. But yeah, we've got a console here without a doubt that's never been opened, and the syscon highlights the fact that we have got no serious errors. As long as you do a syscon dump, which you can do through custom firmware with PS3 tools, it's an application called PS3 Advanced Tools actually, then as long as you've done the dump and there's no fatal errors, then you're still good. It means somebody's opened this, maybe changed the thermal paste, they haven't tried to perform a fix, simply because it was getting hot, and that is a regular theme on these consoles. But to be sure, do the syscon dump, and then on Wiki you can get the interpretation of the codes. It's still a work in progress, so but it gives you a good idea We certainly know what the fatal error codes are, and as long as you haven't got any of those, don't worry about a Southbridge error or anything like that. That's normal. As I said earlier, that's because the pads need changing on those chips. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out, and yeah, when I get the bottom part of this out, we'll reconvene. See you in a moment. Right, so once you've removed these screws, do check and double check and make sure you've taken out the hard drive out of the side as well. Don't remove these just yet. What we want to do is flip this up and then just remove the bottom half of this case. And yeah, you can see we're going to be cleaning all of that up. Case goes in soap and water, gets washed, gets wiped down with IPA, washed again, and then ready for painting. Right, so another good sign is that these screws are intact heads, these two small screws. So sometimes people miss these. Yeah, all the paper that this came in did get inside the console. We've got another piece there as well. Okay, so what we want to do at this stage is remove this back piece. So 2 clips at the top here. And then at this stage we just give it a dust onto our paper, which we then transfer to the bin. And as you can see, if you buy a used console and you don't take it apart, this is what's inside your console. And that's going to contribute to overheating as well, and obviously poor performance of the console. They're not supposed to operate with that amount of dust in them. If you are refurbishing one of these, it's a good idea to have some paper down on wherever you are, so all the dust goes onto the paper and then you can just transfer that straight to the bin. Don't do it over a bin and just dust it that way. All sorts of accidents can happen. You could drop it in the bin. The slightest knock on this could cause a BGA issue, so handle this with care. Yeah, it is big and chunky, but it is fragile, definitely. We will be cleaning it once we take this off, but it is, again, with these consoles, cleaning as you go is really important, because otherwise you'll just be left with a cloud of dust at the end and a motherboard that you need to clean. So cleaning it this way as you go is the way to do it. So now it's time to remove these screws here. Just like 2 or 3 turns on each screw. Go around in a clockwise or anti-clockwise motion. You don't want uneven pressure at this stage. You want everything to be nice and even, so it just comes off with no problems. Okay. Now you flip this upside down, probably get more dust coming out. What we want to do is just unplug the fan, unplug the clock battery, and then what a lot of people do is they then try to take this top plate off and then try to remove this away from the motherboard. So that is not the right way to do it, as I found out through the years. What you do is you remove this away from the motherboard. Just nice and gentle. As you can see, we've got lots of dust, etc. there. We didn't get any real resistance, got a little bit, but nothing like I've had in the past. And that's because we warmed this up by basically turning it on. And those chips are still slightly warm, yeah, which meant that this wasn't completely acting like cement to the heat sinks. Now, if this is completely cold, and the last time it was switched on it got really hot, then the paste liquefies, then it absolutely sticks and cements itself to the heatsink, and then you can't take that off, and it becomes really difficult. And that could create VGA issues as well. So by turning it on syscon, leaving it on syscon fan control, leaving it for about 15 minutes, letting it get hot. If you want to make sure it does get really warm, stick on a game like God of War 3 or The Last of Us, play that for 10 minutes, then turn it off, and then you look to dismantle your console. As you can see, this is just the dust we're getting off after we've taken off the fan shroud and heatsink. Okay. So I think it was fair to say this was a very dusty console. And we've got even more here. Okay. At this stage, get all of this dust off. Do use just a brush like this and be patient. Don't start getting your vacuum cleaner out and vacuuming it off the motherboard, and that could cause you a short, and yeah, you'll get that horrible yellow line of death signal at the end. Don't be doing anything like that. Don't forget to remove these screws. Okay. And then this is the final part of taking it out of the metal. Final part, until we get to the bottom half of the motherboard. motherboard to one side for a moment so we can just dust this off. We'll be going over these metal plates with IPA as well on the cloth. It's good to get as much dust off as you can before we do that. And then finally, I mean, this gives you an idea of just how filthy the motherboard can possibly be if somebody hasn't really looked after their console, or it's just been in an extremely dirty environment. Or it's not been well ventilated enough and the dust has been able to get in and it's not been able to get back out, which is, I suspect, a combination of those factors with this one. So yeah, a lot of a refurbishment is removing dust and getting this surgically clean. You don't want anything less. You're going to go down to the motherboard. You want this to be completely dust free in every single way. And if you've got a garden at this stage, as long as it's not raining, you can go outside, go over it with a paintbrush like this, get as much dust off as you can this way before we then go to clean it with IPA. But yeah, I didn't want to pause it at that point. I wanted to show you just how bad the inside of the console can be and why it's so important to get it clean. So I'm just going to finish doing that, cleaning the components, and then we'll see you when we're looking at the D-lid. See you in a moment. Alright, so welcome back. So we've given it a bit of clean down. This is so dusty though. If you've got air duster, you just want to get something like this and get really strong. Give it a good dust just at the end. Now if you were to do that when it was full of dust, obviously you'd be in a cloud of dust, but it's just very fine particles of dust now that we're down to. Right, so I'm just going to prepare this, the RSX, for delidding. I'll go through with you what I've done and then we'll delid it. After I try and take off this thermal paste. God, thermal paste is so annoying to get off. So anyway, I'll sort all that out, we'll prepare this and I'll see you in a moment. Right, okay, so we're at the point where we're going to delid the RSX. What I have done is I've put double-sided heat-proof tape just in here, because that's where we're going to use our prying tool. I obviously don't take the other side off, it's just quite thick and helps to protect this area. Now, there has been some discussion on whether this is the correct way to delid. I believe it is, because the amount of delids I've done, this has always been absolutely fine. And I think the other method of putting razor blades in the side, I think it just holds too much risk, basically. So what I'm going to do, and this has been another thing that people have been talking about, should you heat up these chips? Okay, well, like I say, I think as long as the heat is even, I've run a infrared temperature tester on these, and they don't exceed 65 degrees. Now, these chips run at 70 degrees anyway on a resourceful game, so I am of the opinion that as long as this is even heat, and to create even heat you just have to go around the whole thing evenly, as it would suggest. And what this does is just help to loosen the thermal paste glue that's on the RAM chips, because that's what's holding this down. So this is set at about, this is exactly 150 degrees, but the chip won't get there. The chip will not exceed 70 degrees, and like I say, this is just to help loosen the glue. This is actually going to help you to do the D-lid. This is just going to help the RSX temperatures. Is this absolutely necessary on the RSX? Well, it's more necessary on the CPU, but I think if you're going to refurbish your console, then just to do the D-lid on the CPU, when you could get lower temperatures on the RSX, which is all going to help prevent board warping, is, I'm just of the opinion that this is how you should do it. Okay, so just a little push up with your prying tool. I use a butter knife, and as you can see, that's come off, no problems at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give that a clean, and we'll be back shortly. Right, as you can see, we've given this a good clean. We've used isopropyl alcohol, cotton wool buds, we've scraped off the thermal glue that was on here. I do go over the die quite a few times with isopropyl alcohol. It has to be absolutely squeaky clean. You can hear that. That's squeaky clean, that's what we want. And now, just go over the RAM chips one more time. I think you can see they're nice and clean. You do need all of the thermal glue off of here. It's not easy to get off. I do scrape it off with a very fine screwdriver and do it, and it takes a while, I'll be honest with you. But I get the result I want. Some people use fine sandpaper. I've used that before as well. It does work. But there is always a risk of touching this. You have to be so careful with sandpaper. You don't want to sand the die. So, but yeah, razor blades get it off as well. But there's always a risk you could slip, so just be careful. It does need to come off. A lot of people say, oh, I won't bother, I won't take the risk. But then what happens is that it doesn't make proper contact. And yeah, the rest is history. You get bad temperatures. And then you think, I've done all that work. And yeah, the temperatures are not great. Right, okay, so at this stage, I use a toothbrush. What we want to do is just make sure that these resistors here, there's nothing, no dirt, no dust, nothing there. Visually they look great, but I'll always go over them. Because what we're now going to do is coat these with clear coat, preparing it for liquid metal to go onto the die. So yeah, you can use clear coat nail varnish. This is the one that I use. It's worked every time basically. I think I got this tip from somebody off another YouTube channel. What I like about it is that the brush does hold the clear coat, because you don't want it dripping anywhere else other than where it's going. So it's a nice applicator you get with this. Just make sure it goes only where it needs to go. Obviously do not touch the die with this, it is close to it, but you can just massage the clear coat onto these resistors without touching the die, as we have done there. Just go over it again, just to make sure that's good. And we'll go on to the next one. Once all the resistors are covered, we're good. And finally, this one here. Okay, so we're going to let that dry and I'll see you in a moment. Right, so that's all dried. Let's just zoom in so you can have a good look at the RSX there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do to prepare for the liquid metal is we're going to put the double-sided tape, obviously not taking the top side off because it's nice and thick, and we're just going to pop that all the way around here, and this acts as a big enough ridge to stop any LM coming out, so no liquid metal will come out of here once we've installed this tape. So the way we do is we just get a piece of tape, obviously longer than what we need, and then we just mark down on here. So we got a crease, cut to the crease, there we go, and that goes over the top, so it acts as extra protection. The clear coat will obviously make sure that there's no shorting, but this will add extra protection for that. And then on top of that, because it's got a lip, it's actually quite thick, and the liquid metal does get trapped, because I've opened one of these several months after using it, and a tiny bit of liquid metal came off, but it was trapped by the tape. So need to get that flush with the board. There we go. So we're just creasing it down here so we know where to cut it. Cut it. Get our tweezers. do it this way around for the sake of the camera. Install it. Now there's no resistors on this side, but we still put it there to stop the liquid metal coming out. There we go. So that's now all prepared. So what we now need to do is do the CPU D-lid. This is the most important D-lid out of the two, and can go wrong. And yeah, I've even seen the most experienced people that D-lid these get a small scratch, and it can be game over with the tiniest of scratches. So how we prepare for this is really important. What I use is flux as a lubricant, because the flux has, let's just see if I can get this on camera, get all the hairs off of that, has this applicator, and what that means, just zoom out, what that means is that we can put this exactly where we want it to go, which is under the heat plate but not where the BGA balls are, so it's between the two. Okay. So we have our tools ready. Let's just come out so you can see what I'm doing. Our tools are here. We make sure they're clean. So I'm sure to clean them before, but we're going to clean them again. We'll just get a baby wipe. Douse it with isopropyl alcohol. Give those a good wipe. And those are the two tools that we're ready to use. Painter's knives 4 and 5. You can get these off eBay for about £7–8, I believe. So once you've got your two tools, you've prepared the flux with the applicator that I showed you around the chip. We now heat this up. Again, this chip will not go above 60–70 degrees. Really, the only reason we're doing this is to melt the flux. So it's going to give us a little bit of lubrication, and it should slide through the silicone a little bit easier. Okay. Right, let me just zoom in onto this chip so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. So I always come in here, that's where I'm comfortable coming in. It just misses the resistors there. Okay, so we've done this side and this side with this tool. Now we need to use tool number 5. We come in where we come in before. We go to where we need to go just by sliding it where it's already been cut. And if it comes out, just do it again. Okay, so when we get to where we need to go, just push it through and come into the corner again. And if it comes out, just go back in the way you came in. Okay, so only go as far as you can with that, and we come back in with this. Be careful now, you don't slide like I just did, because it is about to come off basically. And we can just angle this. I think we can. Very nearly, just take this off. Okay. There we go. So I think you're all nice and close up on it anyway, so let's just get a bit closer. But you can see obviously all the grease that we've actually got on here, but what you can see also is that we haven't gone through the conformant coating, we haven't damaged any traces. So that's the most important thing. So we now get our wet wipe. Just clean this up. Okay. Let me get a cotton wool bud. Douse it with some IPA. I always get a little scratch here which never goes through the conformant coating, so that's fine. It's just where it's cutting through and I have to angle it. It just catches it, and I've still not worked out how to stop doing that. Unless the motherboard always has it anyway. So literally every one I've delidded, there seems to be a hairline scratch there which doesn't go through the conformant coating, which is fine. But yeah. The dye on this one always feels like it's harder to clean. Maybe because it's just been hitting higher temperatures. You can hear it squeaky clean. And do the sides of it as well. Just give it a final polish. Get a polishing cloth. I'm going to give that a good polish. It's nice and shiny. Do the same with your RSX. Yeah, do invest in one of these. You can get these from Wilko, packs of 4 for like £5 at like £1.25. But I've never seen a microfiber cloth this soft. It is the ideal thing to clean the dye with. That's it. Right, so the next thing that we're going to need to be doing is taping up this area here, and the principle of it is that we're going to be protecting the liquid metal from spilling out. So to leave a little gap. Yeah, so you can get your fingernail underneath that, that's good. You sneeze away from the board. Oh dear. I think it's all the dust and everything that I've taken off of here. It's eventually got to me. Just leave a gap, that's it. What happens is that and again I've done this, I've tested this and opened it up again after many months, and you find that the liquid metal just gets trapped here, doesn't go any further. That is good news, because it means that it won't trickle out onto the board and make a short. This is why people are scared to put liquid metal on. The risk of what could happen, they feel, is just too great, and you only get an improvement of maybe 2 or 3 degrees. Now what they don't realise is that improvement of 2 or 3 degrees not only is going to add months, if not years, to the life of the console, but also because it's liquid metal and it's so efficient at removing the heat from the die, what it does is take a lot longer to reach its peak temperature. So whereas MX4 put on here may take, on a resourceful game, say 15-20 minutes to reach peak temperature, liquid metal will take over an hour. So not only is it 2 or 3 degrees lower, it takes probably another 40 minutes longer to reach its peak, and again that adds years to the life of the console. Okay, forgive me, that's not on straight, so you can get your fingernail down there. We'll just give it another polish with the polishing cloth, just in case any sticky residue from the tape got on there. Okay, right, so what I'm going to do now is zoom out so you've seen that nice and close. So what we're going to do is we're just going to clean up the heat spreaders, clean up the fan shroud, and then we'll come back and apply the liquid metal. So I'll see you shortly. Right, I just want to, after that point, I'm just cleaning up the fan, and I want to show you, obviously this was all covered in dust on the outside. So the fan does just pop out. And then what you're going to find is a reasonable amount of dust in here. Again, you get your air duster. Give it a good dust through. Like so. Then we just clean up the back of it. Obviously we want this to be running as efficiently as possible. Even if we can just get an extra 1 or 2% out of it, it's going to make a difference, a real difference. Obviously the compressed air cold now, which is fine. And once you've done that there, we have the fan. And this is fairly straightforward. You can get a cloth, it doesn't need to be the one that you've just used, as long as it's not caked in dust. And you just poke it through with like a very small screwdriver like this. So it goes underneath the fin, you just pull it through like that. Then just have a look at it visually on that fin, and the one behind it here. So it's this and this. Make sure it's absolutely clean. Then we move on to the next one. It's going to take me a little while, so I'll just pause it while I do that and I'll show you the finished product. Right, so after cleaning it, you should get something like this. Once you've done all of that, just give it one final little wipe, have a look down the fins. You should find that most of your dust is now off. Like so. Much better. Right, so now it's just a case of popping this back in here. do want to make sure it's absolutely dry, so I use a cotton flannel. If I feel anything a bit sticky, that is a little bit sticky. Get our cloth again. IPA. It's not sticky, it's a bit rough. Could be where a small amount of corrosion started to set in. So we'll just clean it up to make sure that it doesn't corrode anymore. It's also the flux as well they use to put these pipes on. That's actually what I think it is, not corrosion. So yeah, nothing we can do about that, but we clean it as much as we can, because that's a good refurbishment, is clean, clean, clean. Pop this back in. Okay. So we're just going to give these plates a final clean. Cotton wool bud, IPA. If you find you've got heat marks, nothing you can really do about that unless you sand them down. We're not going to go to that extent. It's just not necessary. But we know that they're as clean as they can be. A bit of a mess of the flux they made when they put all this piping on. But hey, nothing we can do about that. So now we have our two clean copper plated heat spreaders. We've got one going here like this, and the other going here like that. Right, okay, so what I'm going to be doing is using, normally I use MX4 but I'm out of it, and I've ordered some more, it's coming in, but this is as good as Arctic Silver 5. Because it's well away from the motherboard, and we'll make sure nothing is spilling out. That's going to be absolutely fine. We've got the resistors and everything protected anyway. So what I'll be doing is affixing, basically applying a small layer to the back of these, yeah, fixing them on in place. Just sanitising my hands, because I will be using my hands to spread it. So here's the first one. Arctic Silver 5. And the first thing you notice straight away with AS5 is it's a lot thicker than the MX4. So that can make spreading it a little bit harder, so you do have to go in quite hard. Obviously my hands have been sanitised, so there's no oils or anything that are going to interrupt or interfere, should I say, with the actual AS5 paste. So we do that one. Let's just zoom out a bit so you can see that. There we go, so I'll just put that one to one side. Then we do the same, the RSX. Give it a good spread. It's going quite hard on it to get it to spread, but it will go. Okay. Now you're going to have some on your fingers. Just get that off onto these plates as much as you can. I find this is the way to do it with the least amount of waste. So you've got a tiny amount left now on your hands. Let's just get a wet wipe and some hand gel with our hands. Keep that to hand. Bit of IPA in there so I can get absolutely everything off my finger. Oh, okay, it's going to need a wash. AS5 is very stubborn. Right, okay. So we know this is the RSX. It's got the top, it's got the diamond on it. Just going to pop that. Not there. I'm going to pop it where it should go, which is there. And then we have got this one. It's a faint outline of where the paste was on the middle, so we know where to put that. And that just goes like so. So once you've centered it up and you're happy, any AS5 coming out, if you're using AS5, doesn't matter if you've got MX4. But AS5 has got silver particles in, so we don't really want that coming near the motherboard. So we just clear it up. Around the edges. There we go. Add a small amount of pressure. Okay. Now, because AS5 is going on here, we want this to be dry. Always find cotton cloth, make it completely dry. Okay. Right. So now we're back to the motherboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply pads to all of this. I'm going to pause it while I do that. That takes a while, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you what I've done, and then we'll apply the liquid metal. So see you shortly. Right, okay, so we're at the stage where we've put thermal pads on here, here and here. These have still got plastic films on, so we won't forget to take those off before we assemble it. Here we have our liquid metal. So what we are going to do is we're going to apply it to the die, and then we're going to apply some to the underside of the heat spreader. Just hoping I've got some left. Use a clean cotton wool bud. Just spread this around. You kind of want to just push the liquid metal around to the die. Yep, I'm recording. Wasn't sure if I was for a minute there. Now, for some reason, I find it goes onto the RSX die really easily, but not onto the CPU die. Really goes onto the RSX die, no problem at all. Not as easy onto the CPU die, so it just shows you that they are different, made of different compounds. You'd have thought it would just be some sort of glass covering the die, but yeah, with this it just doesn't really want to go on. Whoa, don't want to go off the sides. Right, now I'll try and get some onto the copper plated heat spreaders. Right, so this is going to take me a little while, so I'll just pause it and then we'll come back to it and I'll see how I got on. Okay, so we've spread, and it does take time, the liquid metal on the dies and also here. So what we're going to now do is not forget to take the plastic film off of these two. So that's done, so this is now ready to be put onto the heatsink. And the way we do that is we get our prepared heat spreaders that are attached to the heatsink. We've already cleaned this. This goes on like so. Make sure it's absolutely as clean as it can be. I'm still getting dirt off. Shows you, doesn't it? You can clean it and clean it. Right. So now we have our board fully prepped. Tip it upside down. One last look at the heat spreaders, make sure that's all good. Just pop this into place. Take off these. And it's the same deal really, we're just going to make sure that this is all nice and clean. Take this off. do make sure your hands are clean after using the liquid metal. Just noticed a little bit on my hands there. I'm just making sure I'm good to go. Okay, so once you've got heat pads where you need them on the tokens and basically the ones you're replacing here, we're going to need to put a little bit of pressure just behind the CPU. Seems to be a little bit of dust and whatnot on the heat on these thermal pads. I'm just taking that off. They are sticky. Okay. So, the pressure we can apply to this is the old pads. They don't need to be working heat pads. Like so. There's 4 of them there. Right. Okay, and then the heat pad that we removed from the south bridge, just pop there. Now we're ready for the top to go on. So I'm going to assemble this back together. It's basically the reverse of what you've seen, and I'll see you once we're ready to test. Right, so I have it in my test case, so we're ready to go. So because we had to take out the battery, date and time will now need to be redone. So let me just make sure I've got a hotspot on here. Okay. Let's go to date and time. See if we've got internet. Yep. I'm going to set this to my recommended settings. So I'm now in webman. Yeah, I know you can't see it, but you will see it soon. So move the camera around. I'm just doing this rather quickly because I don't want the system to heat up. Okay. Right. So I'll just pause this a moment while I move the camera around. We'll do a test. Right, here we go with the test. We're just starting into the main gameplay of The Last of Us. So it's really those temperatures we want to keep an eye on. So let's keep an eye on those.
Honey, I need to get your daddy on the phone.
Uncle Tommy, what time is it?
I need to talk to your dad now. There's something.
Uncle Tommy? Hello?
So we put it on 35% fan speed. That's what I would recommend for any resourceful game. If you can go to 40, do it. It's cool, cooler the better. But, you know, 35 will be enough. That's what I test them on. You just don't want to see this go above 66, 67 degrees.
Dad? Daddy?
On 35% fan speed. Otherwise you haven't done anything. You have made no improvement if that's the case.
What was that? There's his phone.
There's his phone. We don't want to touch it.
Here you are.
Sarah, are you okay?
Yeah?
Does anyone come in here?
No, who would come in here?
Don't go near the doors. Just stand back there.
Dad, you're kind of freaking me out. What's going on?
It's the Coopers. Somebody arrived with them. I think they're sick.
Kind of sick.
Jesus. Jimmy!
Dad?
Come here. Come here. Jimmy! Jimmy, just stay back! Jimmy, I am warning you!
Oh my God.
Don't!
You shot him?
Sarah.
I saw him this morning.
Listen to me. There is something bad going on. You've got to get out of here. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
Tommy, come on.
This also is a good test for the tokens. If I get a shutdown whilst playing this and it switches back on, then we know to attack on
You
some
have any idea what's
tokens.
going on out there? I got something.
I've got a video of that
Shit.
on my
You got
YouTube
blood
channel.
all over you. Ain't mine. Let's just get out of here. You're saying half the people in the city lost their minds. Just please go. Some sort of parasite or something. You gonna tell me what happened? Later. Hey, Sarah.
So this video has been going on for nearly an hour and a half, but I can tell you now,
Yours
I've
on the
been
radio?
obviously stopping it and starting it. This is a 4-hour refurbishment process. Just the refurbishment. We're not talking about the customised white case.
Yeah, we're doing great.
That's days of work.
The newsman wouldn't shut up.
My friends think I'm absolutely mad for doing
He
it,
said,
but too many people
roadblocks on the highway.
want this console and it deserves to be refurbished in the absolute best way. And there's no shortcuts. I take no shortcuts here.
Did they say how many are dead?
Probably a lot. Found this one family on
A lot of people won't apply liquid metal simply because There's risks attached to it. If you apply it wrong, you short the console. If you don't apply it correctly and it leaks out, you short the console. And sellers just don't want that hassle. Basically, they just stick on MX4. It runs warmer, but you know they're not going to get any comeback for it. But the old console will not last as long, and it won't run as efficiently. So by applying liquid metal in the correct way, making sure we use the tape to trap it so it doesn't come out, and yeah, you will need on a console like this, you will need to replace the liquid metal probably every 4 to 5 years. So keep my details. You know, if you bought this off me on eBay, I'm happy to reapply it. It will be a small charge, but yeah, I'm happy to redo that for you every 4 to 5 years.
You got a kid, Joe. So do we.
Well, we have room.
As you can see, we're stabilising it around about 63, 62, 63 degrees on the CPU, 62 on the RSX. Now, on a system that hasn't had a dealie or anything like that, you can expect temperatures in the 70s here. Don't forget, I've run it at manual 35% fan speed. There's no protection above if it goes above 68 degrees.
Everyone and their mother had the same damn idea. We could just backtrack and... What the fuck, man? Let's go!
But we are pushing the CPU and RSX to the absolute max. If you go for Call of Duty games and stuff like that, you're probably looking at a much lower CPU. I've noticed a lot of sellers that do these D-lids, when they show the temperatures, they do it online. They're not showing it on a game that's really going to test it. I always use the absolute highest resourcing game there is. That is this game, The Last of Us. This will max out your CPU and RSX. There's nowhere to hide. And as long as we keep temperatures below 66 degrees at 35% fan speed at this game, then we know the console's going to last. When we get to the end of the chapter as well, the temperatures will drop because it goes into video mode. So that means the RSX and CPU go to sleep. Obviously the RSX can recover quickly because it's not running the graphics anymore. CPU will recover more slowly. But we are looking for good recovery times at the end as well. So it's not just about the temperatures that this gets to, it's about how quickly it cools down as well. God, it's annoying how people run out in front of them all the time.
Get back! There's too many of them! This way! Through the alley! Go! He's dead! We're almost there, baby. Back up through the fence! Keep going! Find your way out of here! Come on! Joe! Get to the highway! Go! You got Sarah! I cannot run him! I didn't meet you there! Hurry!
Daddy, we can't leave him.
He's gonna be fine. We're almost there.
Alright, coming to the end, and this is where the temperature should start to drop.
It's okay, baby. We're safe. We're safe. Hey, we need help. Stop! It's my daughter. I think her leg's broken. Stop right there! I'm not sick.
Had a couple of civilians on our Major. Supplies.
Daddy, what about Uncle Tom?
You're safe to go back around, okay?
So, there's a little girl. But... Yes, sir.
We just been through hell. Okay, we just need... Please don't. Oh no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. See, this way. You'll be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know. Come on, baby, please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Danny. Don't do this, baby. Don't do this to me. Come on.
And the reason it's important to see how quickly the temperatures drop is there's loads of full motion video and a lot of excessive gameplay. And if your CPU and RSX can recover nicely, then you know that's going to add to the longevity of the console as well. So the CPU would probably run on XMB at about 5960 anyway, so it's gone down to 61. RSX has fallen all the way down to 50 degrees from 62.
With the bureaucrats out of power, we can finally take the necessary steps.
Los Angeles is now the latest city to be placed under martial law. All residents
Yeah, now down to 60 and 49. So these are excellent recovery temperatures. Because the CPU is pretty much where it would be on XMB now, and the RSX
Calling themselves the Fireflies.
is just recovered very
Your
well.
public charter calls for the return of all branches of government.
Okay, alright, so I hope you've enjoyed the video. I think this highlights just how important liquid metal is, and yeah, I won't be deterred from using it. I know a lot of people will say, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there's risks attached to it, and what's the point? But actually the point is, if you think about it, they've now used liquid metal on the PS5. They've realised actually it adds massive longevity to the life of the console, and it really does help to keep it a lot cooler. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and yeah, I'll be posting this up on eBay. If you've got the time to go through like nearly an hour 40 minutes, then have a look at it and you can see what the end product's like. Yeah, this is like a 4.5 hour refurbishment and test from start to finish, but absolutely worth doing because you get a console that runs absolutely flawlessly. Alright, hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. Bye.